Hey guys, welcome to this video on Pulsar, the new LFO that was introduced as a rec extension in the new version of Reason 6.5, which is a free update rather, for all the users of Reason 6. Just head over to propeller.se and grab your free copy today. Okay, let's get started here. So what I've got going here is just a quick factory sound bank drum loop and an Ancient of Days, which can be found in the Reason Factory Sound Bank Combinator Patches pads folder, my favorite pad ever. Okay, let's hook up one of those LFOs and take a look at what it can do. So I'll right click, and now all this stuff has been sorted into categories. So obviously a dual LFO is a utility, so I will create a Pulsar. Now here's this LFO, and it's pretty interesting, and I don't know how far in and how advanced I will go in this tutorial yet, but let's just see where it takes us. Okay, so the first thing obviously is the LFO one. It's a standard LFO. Now I'll go over the functions and explain really quickly, but first I'm gonna route this to the filter of this pad, because that's routing an LFO to a filter is just like the most standard application. So I'm gonna turn the rack around and connect a CV output from LFO1 to rotary 1 in the combinator, and that's the filter amount. So immediately as I play this back, you can see that the Pulsar does its job modulating this knob right here. Okay, now let's get started with the settings. I'm going to turn off tempo sync. Now tempo sync, obviously you all know what tempo sync does. It syncs the LFO rate to the tempo of the song. Now I've turned this off, which means we have a nice LFO with a number of hertz we can control. Now let's just set this to something slow, maybe something like 3 hertz. Right, this is nice for now. Now this thing in the middle is the waveform selector, which I'm going to touch on in a second. What I think is really interesting is the level. Now the level is a scale option for the LFO. Listen as I increase the level here from 0 to 100%. So at 0 we have no effect at all. So this is really interesting. It kind of scales the output of the CV that's being routed to the filter. So it's really cool that you can just scale your LFO. This would be comparable to if you had a Thor and you were doing stuff in the modulation matrix down here, then this could be compared to the amount section. Okay, just get rid of this though. Okay, so now we have a basic LFO going. Now of course we can change the waveform. Let's just go through the waveforms really quickly. So we've got standard sine, we've got triangle, we've got square, sawtooth, there's a random, and that's square random, there's a slope. Sounds really cool, I gotta say. There's 3 steps. There's 4 steps, and there's 4 steps up and down. They don't sound too differently right now, but it's just different waveforms. And then you're back to sine. This is also an endless circle, as it seems. So you don't reach a limit, you can just keep on clicking through. So yeah, those are the waveforms in the first LFO. I don't think they differ in the second one. No, they don't. Okay, so yeah, we've got this basic LFO going. Now let's touch on the tempo sync. I'm just gonna sync this to the tempo here and put that on 1/4 note. Now what's really cool about these controls down here is the phase, is that you can adjust the LFO the way it swings with the song. Now with the phase you can push the LFO further back and further forward in the song. Now what do I mean by that? Let's say your LFO is a sine wave. Now this cycle of this sine wave is completed once every is completed 4 times in 1 bar, because the rate is at 1/4 of a bar. So let me just demonstrate here. You can basically count with the LFO. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's our bars as well. Now let's say you're not happy with the way this works, because for example this top part here comes just before the beginning of this quarter note. So you can use the phase to push it further forth and back. Let's just hear how it sounds. Listen to the way the LFO reacts with the rhythm. So this way you can set up stuff like offbeat LFOs, which is really cool. Now the shuffle, I don't know what the shuffle does, but let's try. Oh, that's pretty cool. Instead of having a straight LFO that goes up and down, a pure sine wave, we're pushing the tops and lows further to the start and to the end of the cycle, leaving a little gap in between. Quite interesting knob right there. And then lag. I'm not sure what lag does, and unfortunately I can't tell you right now. Let's move over to the second LFO. It gets really interesting when you use when you start to use cross modulation. So let me just turn off the tempo sync here and set this back to 2 Hertz. Okay. Now the second LFO has all the same functions as the first LFO, but you can use it to work with the first LFO. So let's say you want the rate of this LFO to be modulated by another LFO, which is this one. So let me just turn the rate to 1 Hertz maybe, and then use these two knobs to route this LFO to certain functions of this LFO. So if I turn up the rate knob here, the rate of this LFO will be modulated by this LFO. Now, of course, this still sounds normal because we gotta turn the LFO on. Okay. You can see every time this LFO activates or pulses, it influences this one. This one goes faster every time this one pulses up. So this is a really interesting way to use cross modulation. Of course you can do the same with the level, but I think you got the gist of this. Now of course all these LFOs, LFO2, have the same functions, so phase, shuffle and lag do the same. I'm very sorry about not knowing what lag does right now, and I really do want to know, but yeah, unfortunately we won't be able to find out right now. Okay. Now the last thing about this is the envelope, which is really cool as well. Pulsar has a built-in envelope, and this envelope is triggered by this button right here. Now, we all know what an envelope does, and in this case we can route the envelope to influence stuff in the first LFO. So let's just play this back again. This one pulses regularly, it's not being modulated by anything. And now I will route the envelope to the rate of the LFO, and I will add some attack and release to that. Now this sounds normal, but listen what happens when I trigger this envelope right here. And note I will be holding down that button for a couple of seconds. So I'll start to hold it down now. So you can see the envelope lighting up. Now as I let go, the rate returns to its normal value. And this is really cool because it lets you play around with stuff. Of course, we can also do it the other way around. Have a fast LFO. Maybe tempo sync that. I love how this is instant dubstep, I didn't even intend. So yeah, it allows you to modulate your stuff using an envelope, which is really cool. And now, of course, the attack and the rate, of course, influence how quickly the LFO starts and also stops influencing this LFO right here. Now let's talk about the back of this thing. I haven't explored this thing too much, but it's really cool that you have 4 outputs for each LFO, so you can really, really do some CV modulation stuff, I guess. It's nice that you have an extra LFO that you can just hook up to new devices that you want to modulate. Maybe the LFOs in Thor or the Subtractor Maelstrom aren't enough for you, and you want more control. And also, they do have an audio output. Now, I haven't figured out anything I want to do with that audio output yet, but I'm sure there are a lot of nice capabilities, because if you, there are several things that can turn this thing into a monosynth. For example, this keyboard tracking right here. But if you want to know about that, you can check out the video Propeller Hits put up as a promotion for this video. As a promotion for this device, I'm sorry. Right here, I'll put an annotation. And yeah, that's a light overview of the Pulsar dual LFO with envelope. I'm sure that utility is going to be quite useful, and I'm sure I'll use it a lot in my productions. Yeah, so thanks for keeping up with me, and yeah, thanks for watching. Dorincourt out.